Antonio. Nestle Crunch with the crispy rice removed.
There are many companies that have fallen from grace in the eyes of the public over the years. None of them, however, have reached the depths of dislike quite like Nestle has. Here are 10 reasons why Nestle is so hated.
Shame on you.
Unhealthy foods.
I have both type 1 and 2 diabetes.
Ow!
While Nestle has created many of the brands and foods we all know today, they have also been actively blaming their consumers for the lack of nutrition and healthy options in their own products for as long as they've been in business. 7 out of 15 of the most unhealthy and sugary cereals belong to Nestle, and they try as much as possible to not let any blame touch their own hands. Nestle even claims to be a world-leading health and wellness company, despite their products lacking anything related to those categories.
Fake, 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 fake.
A huge issue over the years has been with Nestle labeling their products with misleading claims, sometimes even using downright incorrect information. While this is clearly illegal and unjust, Nestle claims that the many instances of misleading labels and incorrect packaging have all been mistakes. And Nestle, of course, has the money and the lawyers needed to back up these lofty mistakes. When it comes to an unhealthy breakfast, most kids choose Nestle. Stealing water.
Water is money, unless gasoline is money.
It's pretty well known that if Nestle wants to tap the natural water supply where you live, they will do so, regardless of what that means for the local populations. Just ask the Six Nations indigenous people who live near Toronto. These people have a really hard time when it comes to getting clean drinking water. There are no in-home taps, no showers, and no clean drinking water besides a community tap that can be up to 5 miles away. Nestle, of course, is related to this story in a way that truly shows the evil nature of their business practices. A nearby well has been the source of over 100,000 gallons of spring water that Nestle has pumped out for their bottled waters. If the Six Nations people want access to clean drinking water from somewhere other than the tap, they have to buy bottled water in town. I'm sure you can guess what brand of bottled water they sell in town. In essence, Nestle has taken the free and natural drinking water from these people, packaged it, and then sold it back to them for an incredible profit.
Why?
Nestle has been known to source so much water from various countries across the world that some waterfalls and streams have run dry. They continuously steal vast amounts of water without the use of proper permits or care for the local populations they steal from. They really have shown themselves to be some kind of evil reverse Robin Hood, where they steal from the poor to line the pockets of the rich. Sorry, Ethiopia, but Nestle doesn't care.
Take full advantage.
In the early 2000s, Nestle chose to bully an already impoverished country by asking them to pay back a debt to the company of $6 million. While Ethiopia did actually owe the company this money, they were facing extreme poverty and hardship all throughout the country and were in no shape to shell out multiple millions of dollars to a profitable company like Nestle. After extreme public outrage and receiving over 40,000 letters of angry disapproval, Nestle actually settled for a partial debt payment.
Oh, right. Well, that is good to know.
The only time you can count on Nestle doing something remotely good-hearted is when they face some serious public outlash. Profits for chocolate.
Is it Swiss or French chocolate?
Maybe German.
Many people may be shocked to know that the production of their beloved chocolate is, in fact, a very dark and dirty business. The production of chocolate has been host to many scandals, including the exploitation of child workers, human trafficking, and various human rights abuses. Of course, Nestle knew things like this were taking place from the start, but decided once again that profits are more important than people. Who could blame them, though? Wouldn't you rather have a Nestle chocolate bar and just not think think about all the terrible human rights violations that go into making the treats? Well, that's at least what Nestle is hoping for.
I can't take it, Jerry. It's too much.
Nestle eventually came under fire for not actually checking to see if their suppliers were involved in these inhumane practices. They were more keen to turn a blind eye as long as everything went according to their plans. When they had to face the music, their excuse was that it's impossible to source cacao from these countries without some human rights violations being committed. Nestle has also come under fire in Thailand, again for sourcing ingredients that have been heavily involved with human rights violations. In 2016, they were under investigation for part of their supply chain in Southeast Asia having locals working as modern-day slaves. Again, they claimed that no one who has supply chains in this region could do so without accidentally using such a workforce. Way to pass the blame, Nestle. Baby formula and bad business practices.
You think you could milk me?
In the 1990s, Nestle had an idea to market their baby formulas to the world. Doesn't sound so evil, does it? Well, the problem lies in who they targeted with this marketing campaign. Underdeveloped countries were the main demographic that Nestle would be trying to push their baby formulas on. In these countries, they specifically targeted the poorer people who then became dependent on this formula for the growth of their children. The first problem with their dastardly scheme was that many of the people they were targeting did not have access to clean water and were mixing the formula with polluted water, making their children incredibly prone to various diseases. The second major problem was that Nestle gave out free samples of their formula to new mothers in hospital wards across many of the less fortunate communities.
Why would you do that? Unless you're trying to trick me somehow.
Once these mothers and their new babies left the hospital, the formula was no longer free. Since it had impeded the mother's ability to naturally feed their children, their only option was to start purchasing this formula from Nestle. In essence, Nestle somehow made the poor even poorer by making them dependent on the use of their baby formula. And it doesn't get much lower than targeting new mothers and their babies. Or does it? Pollution? Do they care?
No! No!
Nestle is no stranger to polluting the environment. In fact, they almost go out of their way to do so. With over 2,000 water pollution limit breaches in 1997 alone, you could say they just don't care at all when it comes to saving the planet or even negating their own carbon footprint. They have been accused of profiting off of already heavily polluted water throughout China and have been known to start production facilities before their wastewater plants even pass the required approval from local organizations. With most of the West trying to move in a more environmentally friendly direction, Nestle has been heavily expanding its operations in Asia, which unfortunately has been known to be more forgiving when it comes to environmentally unfriendly operations.
How sad is that?
Beyond pollution caused by their water sourcing efforts, Nestle has been a huge producer of CO2 emissions and has only toed the line thanks to the efforts of various organizations around the world. It's almost as if every part of their production involves some sort of horrendous pollutants. Whether it be contaminated water, gaseous emissions into the atmosphere, Nestle just doesn't ever seem to care. A track record of healthy food poisoning.
Poison! I made a mistake.
In 2009, Nestle came under fire for a major E. coli contamination in one of their cookie dough products. Over 50 people became sick after consuming their products, and more than half of those affected needed hospitalization due to their illness. After a woman passed away, Nestle released a statement saying that they have put better safety standards in place so this wouldn't happen again. This tragedy had come just 1 year after one of their most egregious events to date. In 2008, a Nestle milk brand in Asia killed 6 children and put over 850 others in the hospital.
Yikes, that's a recipe for disappointment.
The culprit was contamination of milk products with a substance known as melamine. Of course, Nestle claimed they were not responsible for this event, even after the Taiwanese government showed that many of their milk products had low traces of melamine and pulled them from the shelves. This horrendous case continued to grow to a point where over 300 300,000 people were reported to have gotten ill from Nestle products. It's hard to sympathize with a company that cares so little about their customers that many of their products in Asia contained a dangerous chemical that was linked to over 300,000 cases of illness. Once again, it seems as though Nestle continues to put profits over people's lives. Kit Kat, now with more deforestation.
My last kid get more.
A large disagreement between Nestle and various organizations came to light in 2010. Nestle was accused of clearing large areas of habitat to source enough palm oil for their products. Not only were they destroying beautiful rainforest habitats in the quest for more palm oil, but it appeared that they were doing so without permits. This not only was a problem for the vegetation they were destroying, but also for the animals they were displacing in the process. Orangutans and other rainforest-dwelling animal populations were irreversibly damaged in Nestle's quest for profits. When they were finally forced to do something about the issue, they pledged to change their ways over the next 5 years and find a more sustainable way to provide the world with their favorite palm oil-based chocolates. Of course, without anyone really holding them accountable, it's hard to say if they've actually changed their ways at all.
Fingers crossed.
The next time you bite into a Nestle chocolate product, just think of the orangutans that were driven out of their homes for that precious palm oil. Pollution with a side of microplastics.
It's all your fault.
What? Why?
It can be hard not to fault Nestle for their massive contribution to the plastic pollution that has plagued our world for years now. All the other major bottled water companies are guilty of the same. The problem with Nestle, however, is that they have also been allowing high levels of microplastics to get into their bottled waters.
What?
Ironically, Nestle's Pure Life water brand turned out to be not as pure as the name suggests. In 2018, a lawsuit was filed against the company for the extremely high amount of microplastics that were found in their bottled water. With microplastics becoming a huge issue, you would think that any large corporation would be trying to do their part in not pumping more of these dangerous materials into the world than they already are. The thing is, Nestle doesn't really seem to care about these problems. They care more about their shareholders. Corporate greed always seems to be the top priority for Nestle. They paint themselves as a lifestyle and health brand, but really things couldn't be further from the truth. The pollution from plastic bottles is already bad enough. Now do we really have to worry about plastics in the actual water as well? Water is profit.
Cash money, I'm gonna make it rain.
As many people are probably already aware, Nestle is one of the largest producers of bottled water in the world. Now, many people probably don't put much thought into where this water comes from or how it is sourced. You could say that Nestle really isn't a huge fan of the environment or being a green company. In fact, Nestle has been sourcing vast amounts of water in California without a permit, going as far back as 1988. California has been facing a major drought for decades, and many companies have been active in trying to reduce their impact on the already water-starved state.
You folks have a water problem!
Nestle, however, has done the opposite, refusing to move their production facilities and even stating that they would source more water from the drought-ridden lands of California if they could. This doesn't even cover the insane amount of water that Nestle has stolen over the years from other parts of the world. Even worse is when they decide to take water from communities that already don't have access to much of it. So just remember that whenever you try to conserve water due to a regional drought, Nestle is out there using more water than ever, and then turning around and selling that same water back to the communities they took it from.
I'm very disappointed in you.
Check out more great videos. Just tap or click, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell to join our notification squad. And hey, leave us a comment.